Welcome to VezaTalks podcast. My name is Mario Milanovic, and today I am so honored to have Andres Glusman with me. Uh, Andres is a dad, a scientist, an optimist, which I love, a lean startup pioneer, and a surfer who loves living by the shore. He helped launch Meetup and grew it to a successful exit. Currently, he's the co-founder and CEO of DoWhatWorks, giving leaders the insightful results of split testing running on the world's top 1,692 companies. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So that's awesome. So, I come from the world of affiliate as well, and I know what split testing is all about. But before we get into that, Andres, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you started the journey of entrepreneurship and all that. What was that like?
Yeah, I always knew that I really was into business. I was just, as a little kid, I was one of those nerdy kids. I always thought he wanted to start a company. When I went to college, I was super fascinated by economics and psychology. I actually happened to have those two courses back to back, and I made a major out of it. There was no such thing as behavioral economics as a major you could pick at that point in time. And so I petitioned the college and I got them to let me do it. Anyways, long story short, really super interested in behavioral economics and how people tick. And when I left and started my career, I really wanted to sort of find the opportunity to do that. Luckily for me, after a short stint at Boeing, the aircraft company, which we can talk about, which is the opposite of entrepreneurship, I got involved in the very early days of the commercial internet. And so I found the world's first online advertising agency, and there ran some of the world's first split tests online, as it turns out, right? Getting to work on those things. Was involved in affiliate marketing very early on as well, Mario. So we were building up some of the first programs there, and just got my feet wet and just really fell in love with not just entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship online for all of the reasons that we all love it today, but because it's such a vast and wonderful laboratory for all the different things you can do and the ways you can affect behavior. Got involved in meetup.com very, very early on, and then learned all these valuable lessons along the way. Both there and in my previous startup that informed me or made me become a lean startup pioneer. So it's a weird circuitous path, but it all generally revolves around human behavior and trying to figure out what makes people tick. And then the business applications of those things are pretty profound.
Amazing. So that's cool. So by the way, what was the affiliate marketing company called?
The company that I joined was called iTraffic, which was the world's first online marketing agency. It was this really interesting idea at the time when the internet was brand new, commercial internet was new, and it was the idea of putting links where people wanted to find them. So instead of thinking of it as like, oh, I'm going to buy ads or just put traffic up or put a website up, the question was, how do you get people to your site? And so the company that I worked on behalf of in this case, I think, was either the first one was either Disney Store or was CD Now, if you can remember that. I don't know if you were involved in the internet then, but CD Now. And we started building up affiliate marketing programs for our clients as a way of helping them drive success. And just such an interesting market. You and I, I'm sure, could spend hours talking about that if you want to, but it was such an interesting thing. But there we really working with our customers to help them use this new channel and rethink the way in which they placed links using affiliate technology in order to be able to achieve scale in a place where they were able to get results, as opposed to the other kinds of advertising where you'd spend a lot of money at the time and get the opposite of results, or get results, but get very, 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 very expensive results. So spend $300 for a customer that's worth $100, just not sustainable.
Right. What were you guys using for tracking? Was it Prosper 101 back in the day, or?
Yeah, what were we using? There were a few that were available. My two favorites at the time were LinkShare and BeFast. And I'm pretty sure that BeFast subsequently was acquired by Commission Junction, which I think might be called CJ now. But those were those sort of predated those technologies.
Right. Amazing. So what about Meetup? I mean, that's a really huge, became a big company. And I remember using Meetup many, many years ago. It kind of feel like it faded away, maybe just because I started traveling more and it's not predominant in some of the markets, I suppose, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about Meetup? How did you get involved, and what it, whose idea was it, and how did that grow?
Yeah. So as it turns out, the co-founder and CEO of iTraffic became the co-founder and CEO of Meetup, and so I had worked my butt off at iTraffic. I had gotten 3 promotions in a year, gotten to sort of build up a division of the company, had a great relationship with Scott. And so I left Meetup. I left, all the names are merging together for me at this moment. I left iTraffic and then went to work on a startup for a year and a half that completely cratered, made all kinds of mistakes, and learned an unbelievably large number of lessons. And then Scott called me up and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this new thing. Do you want to get involved?" And I said, "You know what? I just was involved in a startup and I just had a horrible experience with it. I'm going back to business school. I just got into Wharton Business School, and I said, I need to go clear my mind for a couple of years." He said, "Well, will you at least, will you get involved and just sort of help us while you got time to kill?" And I said, "Sure." So I consulted to Meetup in the early days, made their first $14 of revenue. And
amazing.
Yeah. And it was a really great, interesting company, wonderful people. A lot of my really good friends from previous ventures were there, and just got to work with them and help prove out the business model. And then came back full time after I finished up with business school. Not my best business like ROI decision, but it turned out to be pretty good. And then led all kinds of teams at Meetup over the years, including eventually leading community, product, strategy, and growth. And so it was there that I really got to experiment or get a lot of figure out a lot of my on the ground best practices with regard to driving growth and running experiments.
Right. Amazing. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear these stories, about Fred asked me to do this, and like next thing you know, you're selling the company for $6 billion.
It was funny. Well, the funny story around it,
so it's really cool.
The funny story around that is Scott was a good friend of mine, and he said, I said, "Scott, I'm going. Don't worry about it. I know you guys are just getting off the ground. You don't need to pay me. I'll just do it because you're a friend of mine, and I think it's interesting and fun." And he's like, "No, I'll pay you." And he's like, I'll just pay you in stock. So I only got paid. I didn't get paid any cash. I just got paid 100% stock at that point in time, which ended up being a very good move for me. It was a very good decision completely for the wrong reasons, but it was a really good decision. To your point around sort of what became of Meetup, I think it's an interesting question as well. I left. We grew to about 40 million people in users. We were sold to WeWork. It was a really neat company to be a part of, really neat year that I stayed afterwards and was a part of the transition. But I think what ended up happening, unfortunately, in the last few years, of course, is, an in-person IRL company is not necessarily the best kind of company to be a part of right now, or to be running in a time where people are quarantined. So I don't know actually how they've been doing. It's been several years since I've been a part of it, but I imagine they're facing a whole lot of headwinds. Although I do believe that in the years ahead, there'll be a ton of pent up demand and energy for in-person small group gatherings, which I think actually it's a very promising time for a company like that if they can pull it off. I think it'll be a really, really neat time for them.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of in-person meetings. Actually, today I'm not. We have a studio, and I'm not at it today. It's a long weekend here, and nobody's there. So I'm not setting up the studio. So I'm just doing it from home. But you're absolutely right. I'm a big proponent of face-to-face meetings. I believe that the next 10, 20 years will be all about that, as the new generation is coming up and they're unable to communicate with human beings in a way. I mean, unfortunately, because of all the computers and phones and all that kind of stuff. I think that guys like us will be in big demand, and the ability to put together, networking events and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a huge opportunity. So that's great. And then, in terms of, so you went from kind of split testing and to a completely different, model, I suppose, Meetup and everything. And then now you founded a new company called DoWhatWorks. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So DoWhatWorks was really born out of my experiences at Meetup. I was an early pioneer in the lean startup movement. It means that we were running experiments in the early days, and we had a lot of traffic that would come to Meetup, and there was humongous opportunities. If you can get just small improvements in conversion on key experiences, your growth would suddenly kind of compound its way upwards. And we started running experiments early on. We were fortunate in that the first few that we ran were actually successful, and that gave us a lot of momentum and energy and desire to keep doing it. but we ran a lot of A/B
Sure.
tests, which caused for us our growth to kind of go from linear like this to sort of start to hockey stick upwards, which is really hot, huge impact. It was amazing to see. The fun thing about that is you learn the power of experimentation. The other thing I got to do, though, is learn the problems. And there's a lot of the pains that are involved in running experiments that nobody's talking about that were on my mind as we were launching this brand new thing. And so the problem with experiments, in part, is that they're amazing. They're getting easier and easier to launch. It's never been easier to launch an experiment now, thanks to Optimizely or Google Optimize or Adobe. Like so many technologies exist now that can help you run an experiment.
Yep.
Problem is, once you get it out the door, it takes much longer than you would expect to be able to get results. You're limited in the number of experiments you can run by the amount of traffic you have coming to your website. So if you're lucky and you have a lot of traffic, the typical company that we work with right now, we're working with like 6 of the top streaming brands. We work with huge B2B SaaS unicorns, major banks, one of the world's largest banks. They're constrained in the number of experiments they can run because of the amount of traffic that or go to any specific page. So usually on average, it takes a company around 1 month to get enough data to get statistical significance. And so that means if you're running...
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so if you're running experiments and you're limiting the number of shots you can take, it means that most companies of a certain size, like bigger companies, are constrained to about 12 to 24 shots a year if they're lucky on any given page. And the bad news is that 80% of experiments that people run, according to Optimizely, 80%, 80, do not move the needle positively. So you get 10 to 12 shots a year, 8 out of 10 fail. It means that you're like a VC. You're hoping to get 2 wins that are going to be big enough to really outweigh the losses and make your year. And the reason why everyone is getting that kind of pretty profoundly terrible conversion rate or hit rate or win rate is because everyone is learning the lessons on their own. No one is learning from any other experiment that anybody else runs. And what we've built at DoWhatWorks is a technology that allows us to detect the experiments that are being run by the world's top companies, 1,600 plus companies, as you mentioned. And we can detect the experiments that are being run while they're being run and then declare winners and losers after the tests so that any company we work with can learn not just from their direct competitors, but from companies that are facing similar challenges in order to be able to be more effective at making bets and use the data on winning and losing experiments to optimize their landing pages better, to optimize their website in order to get better conversion. And now we're rolling out a new technology using AI that leverages our data to be able to draft headlines for people to use in their ads on search engine marketing so that it will automatically and dynamically generate new headlines for them based on winning and losing variants every single month in a matter of minutes. And so what we're doing is we're trying to take the power of experimentation and take as many of the headaches out of it as possible so that people can win more, win faster, and win with a whole lot less effort. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're all about.
Amazing. That sounds great. I mean, I'm kind of surprised. I remember my affiliate days and, we in essence became, traffic buyers really. And then we got really good into the data. And I mean, we were at one point running 30 to 50 million impressions a day. So when you talk about a month, we had 100 landing pages rotating 3 at a time in real time. And we had answers when we changed something in literally 40 seconds. So a month is like crazy, like, are you kidding me? So we had the ability that, to always rotate 3 landing pages into infinity, so to speak. And, at one point, our conversion rate on a landing page was 43%, which is insanity. I mean, that's like, selling ice to Eskimos, right? Yeah. So I remember looking at this going, and, we had everything, the heat maps, we had every type of data point. And we're talking 2008, 2009, 2010. So you add AI to that. Oh my God, that's it would be on steroids, right? So that's really interesting. I'm interested about how you're using other companies' data to as intelligence to fuel what you have. I mean, it would have to be the same vertical, I suppose, right? It can't be different verticals, correct?
Yeah, the companies that we work with, or any given company, if you think about it, there's a peer set that you can learn from. And depending on the challenge, you have to figure out who the right comparables are. For a messaging challenge, for example, you very much want to stay very narrowly within your own vertical in some regards. Learning what messages works and don't work for your direct competitors. When you start to branch out, though, if you're a company that's a B2B SaaS company and you have a pricing page, you can learn a lot from a lot of other pricing pages from B2B SaaS companies. There's probably more lessons you can learn from looking at Calendly or by looking at Airtable or various other really great product-led growth companies that are facing UX challenges in terms of how do you lay out your plans? How many plans? How do you convey discounts? What's your button copy say? How do you represent a discount? How do you represent free? Do you call it $0 or do you say the word free? There's infinite permutations of things that are going to be interesting and valuable for you to learn with very limited amount of traffic that you have. And if you think about it, it's very, very likely you can learn not just from your direct competitors, but from people who are facing similar challenges. An analogy I love to share here, and that I love to kind of reference, is Southwest Airlines in the United States is historically been like the only airline that's profitable for like decades and decades. And the reason it's the most successful or profitable airline is because it's very good at getting its planes serviced on the ground and back up in the air. So they really, really need to do everything they can to make it so that the planes get serviced quickly and relaunched.
Yep.
They don't study American Airlines. They don't study United Airlines. They study Formula One pit crews and see what does a Formula One pit crew do in order to be able to get their cars out of the pit fast. That's what Southwest Airlines does.
Right.
In the same way, you can learn probably more, and there's more innovation that can happen by looking directly outside your competitive set at what works and doesn't work than you're going to get from looking directly within. And so it's really what we advocate for, and the best people that we work with leverage both their direct competitors and the people in a nearby comparable space that are solving a similar problem.
Amazing. Well, that's a really good analogy. I like that. I worked for an airline for 7 years, and our airline was in Canada, and it was very profitable. And the reason for that is because it had the highest utilization rate of any company in the world. So it was in the air, I believe, 22 hours a day or 21 or something crazy like that, right? So and people don't realize with airplanes is that it is far better for the life of the aircraft to be in the air than on the ground because you don't have the force. It's like, this huge, gigantic thing, right? So those are parameters which, I didn't know about, right? But now that you mention them, if you were to use that, Formula One and whatnot, and actually, because at the end of the day, a company is a company is a company, right? People are very similar in certain things. And, a lot of times when we, for us, when we have landing pages, I mean, we have a lot of SEO traffic coming to our company, right? And so, my first thing I always say is like, look, I don't have the answers. It's basically like whatever the market decides, right? But I can sure as heck tell you based on my experience that this button should be red, this should be saying this should be up here, call to action should be in the top right and all those things, right? Because of your eyes, the way they move and all this, right? So, those things I innately know, but at the end of the day, the market will determine success, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, and I love behavior. That part of marketing fascinates me, because it's like it's kind of like I used to be a waiter in an Italian restaurant. It was a family-run restaurant, and it was really, really, really good Italian food. And people would come in, and a couple of times, they'd be like, well, like I just want some spaghetti or whatever, right? And then I would tell them, I said, listen, you came into my house. I know exactly what's good, what's not. Give me a couple of parameters and I will show you Italy. And, a couple of times these guys would call me a used car salesman, right? And I'm like, okay, just wait. And by the time they finished, not only did they spend, 10x of what they wanted to spend, they had the time of their life, and I was able to produce something and give them this value, which they didn't even know existed, right? And I look at marketing in a very similar way. If you have a good product and you're able to not sell, but show what you have and how it will benefit them, right? I mean, you have a gold mine, right? So that translating that into a landing page is the miracle, right? So, it's going to be interesting to see how AI actually does that. So a little bit about AI. What are your thoughts about the hottest subject in the last couple of months? Do you think we're all going to die, or are we going to able to solve the mystery of how to live to 2,000 years?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I don't have a strong point of view on the existential part, probably because I am an optimist. So I'd like to believe that we're not all going to get wiped out by machines. I feel when I look at AI, the way that I felt in 1996, 1997, when I was looking at the internet and I was looking at what it felt like to use and what the possibilities were that could get unlocked. And if you sort of think about what happened in that time period, it's a pretty good model for what I believe is about to happen now. That everyone at that point said, oh, well, we got to port whatever exists now and make it the equivalent of it on the net. So what was wave 1.0 of the internet commercially was a bunch of brochureware. It was a bunch of pages that looked like brochures. It was a translation of a magazine ad or a brochure online.
That's right.
And then suddenly people realized, oh, you can collect information from users. You don't just have to publish. It can be a two-way street. And you can actually interact computers to computers now as well. And we can kind of create a Web 2.0 in this regard. And it started to unlock brand new possibilities. But it wasn't ever like, oh, like at first it was the internet, right? It was like, oh, do you have a web page? I sort of feel like we're at that stage now, which is sort of like we do AI. From my point of view, the AI is going to become a commodity and it's going to disappear. And it's just going to be like having a website or an email address or something as silly as that. And ultimately, it's about what do you do with the AI? And so the only real advantage that anyone's going to have, so there won't be a competitive advantage that says we have AI versus don't have AI. Unless, by the way, this is for people that are not Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, like the major AI providers will be its own special beast and good for them, and they're going to battle it out. But for everyone else who's using AI, I think the AI is going to largely disappear. And it's just going to be an ingredient around making a better user experience. And it's just going to come right back to what the internet has basically done, which is to say, well, what can you now unlock? What is that experience that's now 10x better? What's that experience that's now 1/10 the cost? Combine those two things, you're now 10x. It's 100x better, value for somebody. And that's where I think AI is going to ultimately go. And it's incredible. It's insane. I am looking at what we can do. So I'm looking at the user experience now that we are seeing, that the AI, we didn't expect AI to be this good, this quickly. So I'm looking at the new product where we have, it takes your ad copy, it takes your competitor's ad copy, and understands what works and doesn't work. And then it generates new copy. And I'm looking at the new copy it generates for you. And I'm like, it's really, really good. And I'm sort of blown away by it. And I wake up at 4 a.m, not because I'm in a cold sweat about like, oh my goodness, I'm like, my company is not going to work. I'm wake up at 4 a.m. because I'm just like giddy. It's like adrenaline around how good the quality of the experience is, because that's so hard to achieve. And so I just think that the bar is about to get raised dramatically, where the AI unlocks a user experience leveraging unique data. And that's what the world will unfold. So our point of view, which is that if we can have unique data and leverage it in a special way and just be just dogmatic and crazy focused on the user experience in terms of just making it dead simple for somebody to do something, that's where the wins are going to come from. And weirdly enough, that's kind of the history of the internet too, right? So like, it just rhymes. It rhymes with 1990, 95, 96, 97. It rhymes with the early 2000s. It's the next chapter here. And it's what I'm really, really excited about.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, I was part of the early pioneers, and I remember people telling me, it's like, who's going to shop online? I'm like, no, I mean, everything will be online. No way, man. You're crazy. Who's going to buy a t-shirt or anything like this online? Like, it was just not, we weren't comprehending it, right? And I was convinced that was the way forward, right? And it's like, it's the same thing with email. It was the same thing with, text. I mean, text messages, SMS is like, what I remember, like, what you're sending? Why don't you just call, right? It was just, it was the craziest thing, right? And, and the same thing really is happening again with crypto, right? Crypto is the same thing. It's like, 20, 30 years from now, nobody's going to be like, oh, you're in crypto. No, crypto is part of our life, So it's definitely, I guess we are early adopters, and I even joke around with a lot of people. I say sometimes I'm too early to be an early adopter. You know, it's like, it's kind of funny, right? But yeah, super interesting. So your company is up and running now, and are you guys scaling? Where are you at right now? Are you guys do you want to hit certain targets and then exit the company, or are you gonna what is the plan?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. It's a company that we've been very focused on the early years of building just the most incredible user experience we can. We believe really strongly in working from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And so we've been building it up. We now have a portfolio. We've now analyzed over 15,000 experiments for our conversion rate optimization product. We have a huge wealth of knowledge on the messaging experiments that are happening on ads that we see on search engines. So the base is there and the product is getting really, really good. And so now we're entering into a new phase where we are putting our foot on the gas and we're launching 2 products, or really scaling up 2 products. So one product helps people really drive and optimize their landing pages using everyone else's experiments. The other product is a product that is leveraging this AI and our data in order to be able to help people optimize ad copy in minutes. And so the goal there with both of these now is just next chapter, build out the marketing, build out the distribution, and just go, because it's really good. In terms of the exit, it's a really interesting question. I don't know. We have the optionality. It's always sort of been about the optionality, and the right situation will materialize, I'm sure. We're just sort of like the mindset is really right now around saying, if you build something really, really good and you create good distribution around it with a proven growth cycle, the right options or the right choices will always be there for you. And so we'll just play it out from there.
That's great. I mean, definitely. I looked at it, but I didn't look at it in depth. I think our company would definitely love to do it. A quick deep dive into it. DoWhatWorks.com.
.io
is the
DoWhatWorks.io.
Oh, I'm sorry. DoWhatWorks.io.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go. So we'll definitely look that up. So as we're nearing the end of our conversation, I always ask the same question to all my guests, and it's the following: if you were in my shoes and you would have asked yourself a question that I didn't ask, what would that be?
Mario, I love your story about the restaurant. Love your story about the restaurant. I think the lessons you can learn in that direction are profound. I used to be a ballpark vendor, and I had very similar lessons learned as well in some of the work that I did.
Right.
In terms of the approaches I would take, I'd be very systematic around creating the experience for people. And that really did drive a lot of like the lesson learned, or like being able to think through, like, how do you create a magical experience?
That's right.
And I think you nailed it there. And that's exactly what I used to do as a ballpark vendor.
It's really a pleasure to talk to you, Andres. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's a Sunday. I know, those weekends are really valuable. So we do really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll talk soon.
Yep. Lovely.